You know it, you love it. You probably watched the awful film with Jean-Claude Van Damme, but you still can't ignore it. The world's most famous fighting game franchise, Street Fighter, will be returning next week on February 16th with Street Fighter V on the PlayStation 4 and PC. For a series focused on a global roster of warriors beating the stuffing out of each other, it's amazing to see the twists and turns it's taken over the decades. Let's take a brief look at the history of Street Fighter and show you how it got to where it is today. Street Fighter first released for arcades in 1987 and allowed players to control a single character named Ryu. Though you could battle 10 different opponents, there wasn't a roster to choose from. A friend could join in as Ken, Ryu's rival, but that was it. The groundwork for the series was laid with the signature 3-punch styles, 3-kick styles, and special abilities like the Hadouken and Shoryuken. In 1991, Capcom had a lot more power on its hands and released Street Fighter II World Warrior for the CP system. Thanks to the increased power of consoles at the time like the Super Famicom, SNES, and Sega Genesis, gamers around the world could finally experience a true fighting game. Street Fighter II boasted a diverse range of characters from the 8 playable fighters to the 4 boss characters. These bosses would later become playable in the Champion Edition, the first of the major updates to the base game. As bootleg arcade cabinets increased the speed of the gameplay, Capcom decided to follow up with Street Fighter II Hyper Fighting, thus granting faster gameplay to console users while adding new special moves and techniques. Super Street Fighter II The New Challengers introduced 4 more characters, including Cammy, to the franchise. Throughout the years, Capcom continued cranking out ports and updates to the base Street Fighter II game, with Super Street Fighter II Turbo adding Akuma as a secret boss. It didn't take long for Capcom to heavily revamp the core formula though. Street Fighter Alpha released in 1995 and introduced something that's become integral to fighting games today: super moves, referred to as super combos here. Air blocking, chain combos, which further pushed animation interrupting, and alpha counters were also introduced. The biggest change of all was the art style, as Street Fighter Alpha featured a more animation-esque, brightly colored palette similar to Darkstalkers. Street Fighter Alpha would have 2 more sequels released in 1996 and 1998, further changing up the gameplay and adding new characters to the mix. Street Fighter III also became a talking point in 1997 and pushed for a new generation of fighters. The series itself is best known for introducing characters like Ibuki, Alex, and Makoto. The franchise took an odd turn at this point as Capcom dabbled in 3D visuals with the Street Fighter EX series. Released in 1996, Street Fighter EX also featured super combos and canceling, but also allowed players to break an opponent's guard and render them dizzy. The game was well received and followed by 2 more sequels, but it felt like Capcom had strayed away from what made the series unique and special. Over the years, the franchise stayed relevant in various crossover fighting games like Marvel vs. Capcom 2, X-Men vs. Street Fighter, and SNK vs. Capcom, but a true Street Fighter sequel wouldn't be seen until Street Fighter IV in 2008. At this point, you'd probably be wondering if Street Fighter had a story. The answer would be yes, though it didn't really stand out all that much. Street Fighter IV will be the next sequel in the franchise, but was actually set 2 months after Street Fighter II. The graphics were changed to phenomenal effect, with Capcom focusing on cel-shaded visuals but maintaining the 2D aesthetic. Large ink brush streaks were highly reminiscent of classic Japanese sumei art and are a joy to behold for the average observer. Street Fighter IV introduced focus attacks, a new countering system to absorb enemy attacks and counterattack accordingly. Super combos and EX specials were still relevant, and there were also ultra combos for cinematic extra flashy attacks. Street Fighter IV was followed by Super Street Fighter IV, Arcade Edition, and Ultra Street Fighter IV as updates. Ultra Street Fighter IV was especially interesting because along with 44 characters and new mechanics, you could choose different versions of characters within the Street Fighter IV franchise to play as. Ultra Street Fighter IV was eventually ported to the PS4 in 2015, but the first real Street Fighter for current-gen consoles will be Street Fighter V when it launches on February 16th. Street Fighter as a franchise is Capcom's second best-selling ever with 35 million units sold in software as of 2014. Despite some ups, downs, and relatively long periods without sequels, it still stands as a pioneer and pinnacle for the fighting game genre. What are your thoughts on the Street Fighter franchise en route to Street Fighter V? Let us know in the comments, and we'll see you next time.